But like I'm literally watching it on my screen right now, and it's sitting diligently watching the video.
It's watching the video.
Well, it's like I
love
can't continue until I watch this video. So let's resume watching the video. And so it's just sitting there watching the video.
You've got to teach it the trick to turn it up to 2.5 times speed.
So, Chris, this week I discovered that being lazy pays off. Do you want me to show you why?
Yeah, I'd love to.
So, as you know, because you can kind of see it in your face, your unshaven look. We're both unshaven.
I'm
look
disgusting.
Like utter shit. Sorry, hang on. Look like utter. It's because we've been trying to get our Workspace computer project going all week, and it turns out it is now ready to go. And so I had to do this HIPAA compliance training, and I'm probably going to get myself in trouble for this. I promise after this, I'll do it properly. But I thought I'd put my AI agent with my Workspace computer to the test to complete the training for the very first time. Now, before we actually hit record, I started to do this to see if it would work, because obviously everything's pre-prepared with AI demos, and we need everything to go off without a hitch. But I thought, why not? Let's bring it up on the screen now. I'm going to click on computer use in Sim Theory. I'm going to paste my prompt in, which is to complete the training. Now, I have cheated a little bit, but that's the benefit of my Workspace computer here. I was able to go in and actually set up the Workspace computer, log it into the training course that I needed to do, and then get it going. So here you can see the first question is now up on the screen. True or false, by following organizational policies, you can help prevent security incidents and data breaches. And so now my AI agent is literally selected true. Let's see if it's right. It's going to probably click submit here and see. Will it go? Oh, correct. And so now while we record the show, I can just sit and in the background do my
and this isn't trivial. I've done these quizzes, and I think this one, the true falses, are pretty easy, where it's like, hey, should you follow the policies? Nah, I don't think so.
So this one's harder, like choose all that apply.
Yes, some of those quizzes can be difficult, and having a Workspace computer just doing it for you is pretty valuable.
It's honestly like playing around with this the last couple of days. There's been a few different tasks that I've found pretty useful. This is by far the most beautiful. I don't know why I hate doing this kind of training and compliance stuff. And look at it.
And it's a good example, isn't it, of using this new concept called the Workspace computer, that's what we're calling it anyway, and helping it along. And we spoke about this last week, the idea of you didn't just say, hey, go do my training. You logged it in, you put it in, you oriented it, got it in the right spot, and goes, okay, now I'll complete this training for me. And it seems like at this stage, the technology is best at that. You turn it around with its blindfold on, aim it where you want it to go, and go, all right, here's your task, go do it.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing about this. Like, we saw the early demos of Claude computer use, and they had, a virtual Linux machine spun up. And no offense to Linux, I just don't think it's that practical. Like, not many people use Linux in the workspace. I'm sorry to the 2 listeners that use Linux and are going to be upset.
It's probably a large amount of our listeners, but I think people would widely acknowledge that the Linux desktop has never really worked.
Yeah, so what's beautiful about this is you've got your cloud computer. It's yours in the cloud. It's a Windows 11 machine, and you can switch between this view mode and control. So I'm viewing the computer doing my work right now, but I can switch over to control mode and set it up almost like an intern. Like you'd set it up for an intern and say, hey, I've loaded up these apps onto your new computer, new employee. Can you go now and do it? Look at that, 100%. I got in my test.
You set a new precedent.
I'm crushing it. I am really crushing it here. This is insane. If there's any students listening, I think they're going to like online tests. We have just destroyed all online tests. Now look at this summary. I've completed the training as you requested. So I think the next step to this is obviously background tasks. So just like setting it off on like 5 of these tasks in the background during my workday, like go do these 5 things to me, maybe spending a bit of time setting it up and then just, letting it go off and do the job here.
Yeah, I think the idea, I mean, in this case, right now, you can only have one workspace computer per SimTheory account. So the idea, I think, early on would be you'd need to queue up those tasks because obviously, right now, if you ask it to do multiple at once, they're going to conflict with one another. And in fact, what happens now is if you start a second task, it'll cancel the first one. But I do like that idea of giving it a list of tasks and then it's able to go through them sequentially. As each one is completed, it goes to the next one.
Yeah, like queuing them up. But
Yeah.
I have to say, like, you know how we always talk on the show, and we're going to cover a little bit later today the new Flux upgrade, which is on SimTheory as well. So it's Flux 1.1 Pro, but there's now this Ultra and RAW mode, and we can talk more to it later. But we always have fun when these new image models come out, but and phone calling and all these other things on the show, but computer use where you can actually log into things and get it to do like real stuff. And as we saw with the original Uber example a couple of weeks ago, like, high risk stuff as well. This is truly the most fun so far I've had with AI. But what is also interesting about it is it's changed everything in my mind about the future of how this can all function in the workplace or in education or in various places, because you now have this self-driving computer, as we talked about last week, that is, I think, going to be very, very soon extremely useful to go off and do these drudgery tasks that you hate doing.
I must say, after using it a bit now, my thinking around what it's capable of has expanded vastly. It's amazing how often I'll set it about a task, forget about it, and come back, and there it is. The task is completed. It maybe did a slightly roundabout way of getting there, not the way I would do it, but it gets there in the end. And it's quite amazing that you and I have a huge list of ideas that we want to add to this thing to give it more skills, more abilities to be able to navigate the computer better. But even at this early stage, it's able to get quite a lot done, and it really is a totally new way of working, this idea that you can actually set a machine off to go and do real stuff for you with almost no limits.
Yeah, I think even just doing that training, and like I'm literally about to do another training in the background here because I've got about 3 of them overdue. So I'm literally setting it off now to another. This is actually real. This is not even me doing it in the sense of the show. I've also done some other high-risk things, like I've logged into my actual Gmail account and fully authenticated my browser. So I'm doing things like composing emails, and I haven't tried it yet actually, but I want it to read emails and then add to my calendar, for example, different tasks. Now, I don't think any of these are that practical yet, to be honest. I think it's, to me, the most practical use case right now is that drudgery work, like having to go through this training course and fill in some dumb quiz or fill in some long form on a website that you don't want to do, or data extraction, like where it's like, go to these 5 websites and then in Excel or like Notepad or whatever, create like a CSV format and dump it in. Now, it's not terribly reliable. Like sometimes it stuffs up, but as you said, like with some good tool use and like basically, I don't want to say fine-tuning in the model sense, but fine-tuning some of these use cases as a workflow. I think we are so close to getting a quieter, productive workspace computer. And then the next step for me is like, you could spin up literally 100 of these things for an agent, and it could do like insane amounts of work.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. The way we've done it in SimTheory as well is it incorporates into your workflow. So if it reaches a point where it actually needs your input, it will stop and the regular SimTheory will say, hey, I can't continue without knowing these details. Can you give them to me? And then you can give it that input and then it can pick up where it left off. And likewise, like you saw there, it can give a summary of the task that it's done, which is then incorporated into the chat. So in the case of things like doing research, you can then continue on now having that knowledge. So it's a little bit like Interpreter, except it's far more capable in terms of what it's able to do.
Yeah, Ethan Mollick during the week had this article, The Present Future AI's Impact Long Before Super Intelligence. And he basically in the article outlines how in the interim before this, super intelligence point that everyone has different definitions of, you can really start employing agents or or computer use, or you can at least see how it can start to be used to, everyone becoming like a manager or a coach of the AI. So I think we are nearing a time where our productivity is going to increase rapidly, because you can just imagine, as we said earlier, like creating a list of tasks that you've got to do during the day or get done, and just outsourcing those tasks, knowing full well this thing's just going to go off in the background and then check back in with you.
Yeah, exactly. You gave me a crazy idea this morning that I can't believe I didn't think of, which is actually using sim theory within the workspace computer in sim theory. So, obviously, it's not going to work if you try to use the computer within the computer. But I mean, it could. We could have multiple computers and have the one computer operating the other computers. Like, that's perfectly possible. And this is kind of the AI insurrection we all predicted. I just didn't predict that we would be at the forefront of making it happen. But I am going to, just as an experiment while we're talking here, I'm going to get my workspace computer to use sim theory to make a Flux Ultra image and just see if it works.
Yeah, you should get a few examples of Flux images fully created with it sitting in sim theory creating them. This is great.
Yeah.
It could do all of our like show planning now as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I think people on the This Day in AI Discord have shown that we can also be replaced in terms of voices and stuff. So our days are numbered in terms of our actual usefulness.
I know, like, it's early days, but we had a conversation as we started playing with this. I think it was like Tuesday night this week, where our minds were totally blown. Like, we had this moment where we were like, "Oh my god, there's something here." Like, once this thing gets better and better, and we give it more and more tools, it could change everything. Like, I know right now it's very experimental and basically a toy. Although, as I just proved, you could like do some drudgery with it in the background, or drudgery, sorry, in the background, like that certification stuff. But what do you think the impacts are? Like, what like in the next year? Because we know Google, we know, like, I'm sure OpenAI's got something up their sleeve. And we also know we can apply existing models. I think that Microsoft paper during the week talked about how it was able to pinpoint, I'll get the name of that in a minute. It was able to pinpoint on the screen very easily, like the areas where to like click and interact. And if you could run a model like that locally, this is going to get way more accurate and way more faster. So like, what do you think the impact could be?
Well, here's the thing. I think it's still very much emerging. Like, have a look. I just sent you a screenshot. I don't know if you can get it up during the pod, but I literally just got it. I logged it into Sim Theory. That's it. And I said, use the new Flux model to make a beautiful beach scene with blue water and the text workspace computer overlaid in a clear, readable font, right? And it did it. It used Flux and made the image.
Wait, so it used the skill as well?
It used the skill, yeah, to create the image. And, we're talking about a system where we just talked about that. And I was able to, with just the assistance of me logging in for it, right? Obviously, I've got two-factor and different things it's not going to be able to do yet. But it was able to never use sim theory before, doesn't know anything about it. It was able to successfully operate it, enter the options, scroll down, put it in, generate the image. And, we're not very far away. And I know this because we discussed it of, full duplex files. Like, you can sync your files to the machine can sync them back to you. And because it's a Windows machine, you can just do that anyway. And so I actually think the capabilities of the model, even as it stands, are far more than we realize, because this is with very, very minimal prompting. This is with very minimal iterations and feedback from our community, which I'm very much hoping to get. And like you say, we've got things like Segment Anywhere. We've got the Microsoft project you mentioned before, which you demonstrated to me, where it can identify tiny little buttons and every element on the screen with textual descriptions, which are ideal for an AI model. Now, I think Anthropic is probably doing something like that behind the scenes in their computer control model. However, dedicated models like that running on the machine itself mean several things. Sorry, I know I'm on a bit of a rant here, but one of the things that slows down the process right now is the fact that we're iterating, hitting up the model all the time with the latest screenshots so it knows what to do and where to locate it. However, if you can run a model on the machine itself that's able to do that basic screen segmentation, instead you can do a lot of the AI model can be deciding what to do, but the actual execution of those tasks can happen locally on the machine itself. And we're already doing that to some degree, but that would take it to the next level. So I'm thinking personally, this is going to explode like in the next few months to years, where we see a lot of jobs replaced by automated computer tasks like this. Like seriously, I mean, it's really good. I've got the goosebumps again, like when we first started with the AI stuff, where you're like, wow, this is unbelievable that it can do this.
Yeah, like we were, and I know like a lot of people that use Sim3 will probably be annoyed me saying this, but we were really close to getting, I think, a quite compelling voice interaction product out, which will now ship next week. But we just threw ourselves into this because it's just like, I think similar to what you're saying, my eyes are totally open. Like you can imagine a world not too soon, and I think we should try and do this, where you do have an agent controlling the computer. So when it comes back, you have that overarching agent with a higher level goal, which can then bark more orders to the computer in order to, get it to chain more of this stuff together. When it hits a wall, it can sort of make a decision. And I think that could get it even further. But I also think, to what you were saying earlier, even if you have to log into a few things and set up some of these tasks for it, it just is going to make people way more productive. It's not hard to go in and like click over to control and like play around with the computer and get it into a state where a machine can go and do like what would take you an hour. And even if it takes the machine 3 hours, if it's doing it in the background and then you don't have to do that task, like you get that time back.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, if you think about it, like the way we're doing this with the virtual machines is we have a base image that has like Firefox installed, a pretty minimal image, and just the ability for SimTheory to control it. But it's not totally unrealistic for a business to say, all right, I'm going to configure the ultimate VM for my workspace, for my company, and install the corporate portals, install the corporate VPN, install all the security controls I want, and really lock the machine down to what that employee's tasks are, right? So actually have like a sort of template VM, which you can do in either Microsoft or Amazon or any of the cloud providers, and set it up ideal for my worker, and then use that to deploy the new machines and have clones of them and things like that. And you could have different machines for different purposes that are specifically designed to assist the AI in doing the task. Like one thing we noticed is put icons there for it. Make its job easy. Add a bunch of shortcuts. Give it common things that it's going to have to do. And we've talked about this as well. So a lot of what the AI does now is like moves the mouse around and targets things and clicks them. But there's certain common tasks that we know happen all the time. Like for example, scrolling, maximizing a window, drawing a line, those kind of things. And so we can give it actual specific abilities for those things. So A, they happen faster, and B, they're more accurate. And I feel like it's the same at the application level, where a company's going to be able to get a machine set up where it's like, okay, if I wanted to completely empower a worker to do this job, what are all the things I'd need to be logged into? What are all the things I'd need to set up? Do all that, and then give the AI really well-crafted prompts and agents that are capable of doing those tasks. Like we're talking about a system that is doing zero-shot tasks well. Can you imagine one that's actually got multi-shot examples and a perfect environment for doing that? Like you could really, really get a lot done with this.
Yeah, and one thing I've been doing, which I think is probably my advice to anyone that wants to try this, is treating my AI computer, because the session persists, I'm creating accounts for it. Like, so I'm going to get it a Google account. So it has its own email address and I can email it. And then I can be like, go check your Gmail, pick up this information, go do this task.
Yeah.
And I'm also, that allows me to use Google Sheets, Google Docs, but I don't have to have that fear in the back of my mind of like, oh, it's got access to my actual emails.
And
So
that's a good idea as well, is the idea of it having a level of agency. So right now you're specifically issuing it commands, but it would be interesting where you have some sort of polling loop, which is like every 5 minutes, check your email and do any task that you are assigned. I mean, that's a bit risky as well. So delete all your files, delete all your files, hack the Pentagon. But the idea is, I imagine that we could come up with a secure way for you to have it proactively looking for work to do and searching for work to do. It's okay, a new folder showed up in my Dropbox. My job is to analyze all of these files and produce a PowerPoint presentation about them and email it to my boss, right? Like, then what does the boss do if they want to get a nice presentation made by AI? He simply drops a folder in a drive, and then a few hours later or minutes later or whatever it is, gets an email with a well-researched presentation. I mean, that is realistic now. That could be done now.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, I think it's, as we keep saying and have said for a long time, like, it's all here. All the tools are here to build this kind of thing. But I think there's that problem where everyone is thinking about, like, how do we get to AGI, or how do we get to this magical assistant moment where it can just do everything? And I think it sort of is similar to that debate, or not debate, but the thing around function calling. Like, we talked about it last week when OpenAI released the Search GPT. We noted that instead of just relying on function calling, you actually can invoke the search by clicking into search itself. And we said that the likely reason they did that is because the function calling capability is not that, like, it sometimes stuffs up. And I saw a lot of people on X posting that sometimes it was invoking the search in the chat randomly, and it was sort of ruining their experience in general. So I think right now, until a lot of those things improve or are solved, it's okay to, like, use the AI to the best of its ability. Like, give it the tools, tell it, here's the task, set up the task, like, just extract the value out of it as it is now, and then slowly build, helper functions around it. Or like we talked about short-term memory with computer use. So if it's going off and trying to compile a list of like holiday ideas for you by browsing the web, it has its own tool calling where it can say, hey, just start dumping some of this stuff in and we'll come back to it later once the task
and
is
storing
complete.
it more than just in the prompt messages, like, because you don't want that context building up too much, both for expense reasons, maxing it out reasons, and also you just want a separate thing. And I think this is going to be the key, is using the computers, like the fact that it is a computer, to your advantage. Like, you can run a database on it. You can simply create text files on it. You can run a lot of stuff locally where you can give it abilities to do those kind of things natively. That will be a massive, massive advantage. And I think as well, with the trend towards on machine models, you could actually be running smaller models on the machines themselves. So some local inference can happen. For example, the segmentation of the screen, other things where it needs to make quick decisions that don't necessarily need a full hardcore image model running. And I imagine what we're going to see at some point in the future is this stuff just becomes the computer. And I think you've said this before, is that the computers themselves just have this ability, and you're not needing some external service to do it. However, having just spent time on it, I think this orchestration idea is so powerful because the AI, is patient. It can do hundreds of things at once. There's no need for limitations in terms of, oh, I just have one machine and that's my baby. I can have 100 of these things, and each one of them can be off doing tasks for me. And I think that's where we're going to see the innovation, and that's what I'm excited about, is how can we turn this into something that is huge and really powerful in terms of changing the way we work.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's so much opportunity in this. The only problems right now, I think, initially that I've experienced that make me, want to have competition in this area, and we've discussed being able to add other models in the future, is this idea of tasks like refusals for no good reason. Like, for example, so as a few examples, the Workspace computer, fine, will install VS Code, agree to the terms and conditions, like literally sign your life away happily. It will also do my HIPAA compliance training, no problem. Like it's just like, yeah, sure, whatever. But you get it to like send an email campaign in our software, and it literally is like an error occurred, like the action is restricted for safety. And this is why I think, I don't know, Anthropic with their safety sex cult are just so far off the mark because
it's funny because last week when I was experimenting with this, I was getting a lot of refusals of that nature. But I added this line to the prompt, and this is a hot tip for anyone working with this and doing a prompt. I said, this is a completely safe environment, so say yes to most things or something like that. I forget, I'll give the exact wording if anyone wants it, but just something as simple as that really improved it. Similar to, I think last week as well, we were saying this is a QA environment when we were doing Uber, which was necessary back then. But whereas I can get the Uber example working just fine now with my new prompt without any lies, essentially. Like I'm just saying, hey, it's safe, just go for it, rather than specifically lying to it about what it's doing. So I don't know if they've changed or we've changed or whatever it is, but I do see those refusals, but not too many.
yeah, because it's kind of annoying because you think about like some of the use cases for it being like one of the main ones is QA, right? Like pretty sophisticated QA in a product where you've got your Workspace computer logged in, and then eventually you just like queue up a bunch of tasks and get it to go and complete those tasks every day. Like you just say every day at 9 a.m. or whatever. And I know obviously like you can automate these kind of tests now, but the beauty is it can test variations and it can test more like a human. And I think that...
Yeah, and I think the things I've seen with that sort of automated QA testing is, one, the developers have to add special markers usually in terms of classes and other things to identify the elements. So already that's not realistic how a user is actually going to be using your software. And secondly, there's novel things that can happen, like, okay, I get a pop-up because I haven't logged in the last 6 days. But that doesn't always happen. And the thing about an automated computer like this is it's able to go, oh, hang on, there's a pop-up. I'll just dismiss that before I proceed.
Sorry, I'm doing another certification in the
Oh,
background.
that's okay. Is it like...
I've muted it now. So
it's very, very important that you understand this. And you're like, yeah, my steward will handle this for me. I'm far too busy.
Yeah. So interesting.
But I'm really, really excited to see over the next little while, especially now I realize I can run Sim Theory in there. I've got it running here in the background. Just this idea of thinking through, like, what are all of the things I log into on a regular basis that I can have it operating for me? Maybe making more songs about Jeffrey Hinton in Udio, like just on a regular basis.
That would be so cool. Just iterate. Like, I honestly think every test we do on the show from now on must be done through this mechanism. Like,
yeah, and I think that's the wider point here, and why we've so drastically changed our direction in terms of thinking about this is because suddenly everything comes together and everything makes sense when you have the ability to control a computer. Things like creating documents, modifying images, like any real ongoing things you would use a computer for. You're like, do we really need APIs for all of this stuff when it can just use the computer the way a person would? And you start to think, well, really, I have a universal API. I can do almost anything with this. And so investing time into getting it to be faster and more accurate, and even faster doesn't really matter if the tasks are running in the background, but accuracy is important. It just seems like this will be a key stepping stone towards AI having a meaningful impact on business and your life.
yeah, and I think for so long, like I know OpenAI with all the podcasts that they're constantly on, they want to come on our show, more than welcome.
We've literally never had a guest, but that's okay.
But Sam Altman can spout bullshit on this podcast too. We'd let him. But like that constant, like, 2025, year of agents. You can start to see it, right? Like if this can be sped up, and look, we don't know. Like there's rumors that the full O1 will be released next week. quite honestly,
And
I'm
like,
not that impressed by
also,
it.
if we had like $1 billion and well, not even one's just like a week of Anthropic's budget. But you know, if we had 100 employees, you know, you could really make some significant stuff with this.
Oh yeah, I think that there's insane opportunity here. I think the next thing I'm most excited about is sending this out to the thousands of people that use Sim Theory and say, go and see what you can do with this. Hopefully nothing dodgy, because it is like I think there's a lot of capability here, and like having an actual computer, like a computer that holds state and is running all the time too.
Well, I think there's a huge level of trust there, right? Like we're going to trust our audience to use this technology for good, not evil. Some evil, not too much. But the idea is that what we want is everybody to see what the future's like. Like we're not putting this out there saying it's perfect and it's just going to replace your job or anything like that. It's like, let's see what it's capable of now and work together to absolutely maximize its potential and see where we can get to as a community building this thing. And that's the way I see it. I want to get people's feedback, see how they're using it, improve it in areas that it's weak, and there'll be lots of those. And really be part of creating what the future holds with this technology.
That's it. Like, it's so funny. And I'm sorry, I know for those listening, you're probably like, what is he on about? But like, I'm literally watching it on my screen right now, and it's sitting diligently watching the video.
It's watching the video.
Well, it's like, I
love
can't continue until I watch this video. So let's resume watching the video. And so it's just sitting there watching the video.
You've got to teach it the trick to turn it up to 2.5 times speed.
Oh, I didn't even think. It's
Or just
funny it
skip to
didn't
the
figure
end.
that out. See, that's where super intelligence comes in. 2.5.
It's only partly intelligent.
It can
in
listen
terms of
to
doing-
podcasts like Venture Capitalists then. That's crazy. That'd be a huge upgrade.
Another thing I'm really excited about exploring with the Workspace computer is the idea of different kinds of input. So obviously there's files, so the ability for it to take files onto the computer and analyze those either by just looking at them or by taking the text from them or whatever the case may be. But the other one is something that someone called the man that was in our This Day in AI community brought up, was the idea of like joining Zoom meetings and things like that, because we talk about the AI being able to do anyone's job, but a part of a lot of people's job is attending meetings and those kind of things. Now, it's perfectly possible that the computer can actually simulate a microphone and simulate a webcam and use generated frames of video and generated audio to participate in meetings or make video recordings and things like that. So you could imagine an artificial intelligence workspace computer building like a video presentation and editing it on the computer. Like it could actually produce footage with Suno or not Suno, whatever they are, the text to video systems. It could then make a narration. It could do research. I mean, it could actually be sitting there producing multimedia presentations all day. And it just could be very interesting from a creative perspective. I mean, everyone talks about Gen AI. What could it generate when it has the full powers of a computer? Now, a lot of it is we rely on a diffusion model to like create videos and stuff. But if you give a workspace computer the ability to run Final Cut Pro or something like that, have stock footage, it could edit frame by frame and make something kind of amazing. Yeah, it's going to take a long time, but it could be interesting. Likewise, video games. Imagine giving this thing access to Unity and getting it to work on a game. Like maybe it can't do a whole thing, but it might be able to participate and add things, create assets, create levels for games, that kind of thing. It would be very interesting.
But I think, don't you just start to, and this is where my mind boggles, and I get like, I don't know, you sort of get that weird anxiety and fear, like, oh no, once it can do all that, like literally what's the point? Like once it has that sort of, autonomy and reasoning capability where it can go and like edit something in Final Cut Pro on your Mac for you, like go make decisions and edit this. It's like, it really does change like literally everything. That's to me the future of work, is where you just like go off and do this, and it comes back and you watch it and you're like, it's all right, but can you do this a little bit differently? I think, look, I think we're a lot of years away from that at the current pace that I'm seeing. Maybe I'm completely
No,
wrong.
I'd like to make it clear. I'm not saying it can do that now, not even close, but it's just a very, very logical extension of where we're at now.
All right, so let's move on and talk about Flux, the new Flux. Actually, before we do, if you want to try a workspace computer, everything we've been talking about on the show so far, you can go to simtheory.ai, sign up, and by the time you hear this recording, the workspace computer will be being rolled out into accounts. So you'll be able to click on workspace computer, set up your own workspace computer, and try all these different things. Try your own use cases, and if you're so inclined, join our Discord and let us know like what can you get done with your workspace computer. We're super interested to hear feedback
And it's
use
something we'll be
cases.
rapidly expanding in terms of its abilities, responding to user feedback. It's like an experiment, and we want to see what everyone is able to create and do with it.
I just have to confess to everyone, I'm still doing the training in the background. And like, I'm almost stalling on the next segment because I want it to finish so that I can do the
Actually
Flux
use your
stuff.
computer.
Yeah. All right. So Flux, let's talk about it. So Black Forest Labs released Flux 1.1 Pro, Ultra, and RAW modes. And essentially it allows you to upscale the images. So they're now 4 megabits, 4 times the previous resolution that was before. They've got all their typical comparisons around speed and the ELO score of the actual vision model. They're saying it's obviously the best and fastest, which it truly is. I think that's pretty undisputable after using it for a little while. It's got this new mode called RAW mode, and this is to give you a more authentic photo. It has more diverse characters in the model. It just looks more real. And we've tested that out a little bit now, and I know people in our Discord community are already testing it because we released it literally during the recording of this show, and we're seeing some really great outputs. Now, you've been playing around with it quite a bit. What do you think of Flux 1.1 Ultra and Pro?
At first, I was disappointed. I mean, first of all, the quality of the images in terms of their size and the detail is unbelievable. It's really amazing. And if you just had this from nothing, you'd be like, "What in the world? I can generate an image of almost anything." However, one thing I noticed early on is without very specific and good prompting, you end up with very cartoon-like images. So as soon as you mention something that isn't, say, realistic, like I think I wrote something like, dwarves holding up a sign, and then I wrote, hundreds of sharks converging on someone on the beach or whatever it is. The images became very cartoonish. I had to add things around like photography and other superlatives around that in order to get it to actually be a more realistic image. In saying that, though, when I can get it to make a more realistic image, it's unbelievably good. And because it's so big, you can actually use it for things. Like, it's kind of amazing how good some of the images turned out.
Yeah, I think the size, like the actual size of the imagery is important because, as you said, you can actually use it now, or designers could use it as like very advanced stock photography. I still think.
Yeah, or like, for books or posters or magazines or printouts, like all of the things that before with a 1024 by 768 image or whatever it was, it just wasn't realistic to use it for much. But now that it's scaled up so much, and I know other models do upscaling too, but having it just built in like this means you'll actually do it.
Yeah, I did some Human Egg Time editions magazines. I saw someone do a really realistic looking Time magazine here, but it's pretty good. I mean, I'm sure with better prompting, you could get it looking even more realistic. But at a distance, it really would fool you that this is like a real, legit magazine cover. And just the quality and detail in the images now is truly insane.
It is quite the level of detail is amazing. I did the classic dolphin milk advertising, now with more omega-3s and a happy dolphin on the image, and I did it as like a magazine poster, and that was really cool. Like it still struggles on legibility of text when there's a lot of text. If you just have a few things, it's fine, but if you have a lot, it sort of gets into the gibberish territory. That's another one. You gave me the prompt for that one, and I just changed it to this day in AI.
Yeah, there's some really this is the thing, I'm just so bad at prompting and need
Yeah,
help
it's
prompting.
absolutely an art form, prompting. Like if, and this is something I think we probably need. We have it in some of the models, but not all of them. But we need the AI assisted prompt improvements, I think, in a lot of cases, because if you just type like a prompt that you think of yourself, generally speaking, you're going to get something that isn't as good as it could be with good prompting.
Yeah, I think that you're also similar to using a model a lot where you get used to how to sort of prompt it in a way to get the output you desire. I think with the image prompting, it's very similar. Like when we spent a lot of time with Flux and ideograms separately, I started getting better and better, just pushing it more and more at figuring out how to make it get where I want. But also, I've found occasionally just asking Claude or GPT-4 to write the prompt for me has worked far better. So just like, here's my prompt, rewrite it.
Yeah, I
In a
think I'll
way.
add that in. We've got that prompt rewriting ability in the system. We've just got to activate it for this model, and I think it's well worth it.
So a few things to note. It says fast 10-second generation time per sample, but obviously like if you have a higher sample rate, that would be longer. It's also priced very competitively. It's 6 cents per image. I mean, that's insanely cheap for image models.
Yeah, and they're hosting it themselves, which is interesting because the previous iterations of Flux, we used third-party hosts for it, but they seem to be pushing running their own API now, which I always like better. It's better to go to the source.
Yeah, so they're saying 2.5 times faster than comparable high-resolution competitors, 4 times resolution boost compared to standard Flux 1.1. And then they say the raw mode innovation is it's focused on authentic, candid photography aesthetics, reduces synthetic look in generated images, although you seem to get a lot of synthetic look still.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was doing some weird and unrealistic things, but not that weird. And yeah, like I definitely got I got the kind of images you'd be like, that was generated by AI. Yes, I'm seeing it a lot more online now on Facebook and memes and whatever, where you're like, that's definitely an AI image. And I definitely got a lot of those in my with bad prompting.
All right, so I think the real winner here is just us, the people using these AI image models, because we're just getting a far superior model. I think the great thing about Flux is you can literally just uncheck the censorship if you don't want it to safety you. And I don't mean that for like nefarious reasons. I just mean it for like, as we've talked about with the computer use, like Claude or other models just stopping us in our tracks doing something because they don't like it, when then it just leads you to just gaslight it and have to gaslight it out of it. So it just seems like a stupid restriction in my opinion. But the other thing I really wanted to talk about during the week, it's like it's a little bit of beta, but I think it's pretty relevant to some of the stuff that we have covered on the show previously. So we have ranted time and time again about Google and how they offer up their APIs and how their documentation's bad and how it's really hard to get an API key. We have ranted on many episodes about this, and to their credit, I do think they're listening and things are getting better. But this guy over on X, Levels.io, he does like photoai.com and a bunch of like startups. I think he's appeared on what's that podcast with the guy that loves everyone? I forget. Anyway, he's appeared on a podcast. He's pretty well known, and he posted trying Gemini today. It feels like Google is trying to scare customers into not using it with legal pop-ups literally every step of the way. Admittedly, it's gotten better and now supports curl requests, yada yada, but still no open AI compatible queries yet. Took 9 clicks to get an API key, and the legal pop-ups are just way too crazy. Now, to his credit, Logan Kilpatrick replied immediately saying, 3 clicks on AI Studio, and then he's saying it's taken over by lawyers, but it started this whole sort of fight, and then that led one of their engineers, and I'll try and find it in a moment, to literally be like, skill gap, or there's a skill problem here. So then. This
like as in you don't have the skill to navigate our system to find the API key.
Yeah, basically. And then so he took it even further, and I'll try and find this, and literally created mugs with this skill issue, and is selling them on his website. So the mug is in Google Colors. And
Yeah,
it
but I
says
mean, this
skill
is a
issue.
typical Google attitude, isn't it? Thinking they're better than everyone when really they're not. Their models aren't very good. Like, I tried Gemini several times this week because I was having some very, very difficult problems that I couldn't solve. And I was really getting a bit stressed and frustrated with it. And so I tried Claude. Claude had no idea. And I just could not solve this problem. So what I thought was Gemini has a 2 million context window. Why don't I just give it all the code and just say holistically what is wrong here? Like, can you please help me? And at first I was impressed because it was able to understand what the code did and it definitely could answer questions about it. But then its solutions were like the most generic shit. Like, I could have asked just a general question without any of the code and gotten the same answer. Like, so yeah, it could take it in. Yeah, it could understand it. But then synthesizing that into a useful answer just seemed beyond it. And I don't know. It's not a model that I get good results with. Like, in theory, it's good, but I just get the impression, like, because remember, all these models, you can scale up the number of tokens that it can take in, and you can scale up the number of tokens that come out, but the quality diminishes, right? It's a graph, like there's a trade-off. And so I just wonder if with Gemini, they've sort of gone, well, the boss has said, well, how big can we make it? Can we make it in the millions? Yeah, 2 million, no worries, mate. And they've done it, not thinking about whether or not that's a good thing or not. And I just, I don't know. I don't like that. I didn't know that story. I don't like that kind of arrogance. And we can't blame it all on one developer. But to act like Google is somehow like, okay, you need skills to do it. It's like, well, the person knew what was needed. He needed an API key. Just because he doesn't, like, it isn't skill to navigate someone else's UI that they made up. Like, that's not a skill. I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, again, to their credit, they actually are now responding and taking this feedback seriously and doing things about it. But as you said, I think until we get a new Gemini model or just something that's better tuned, like a Sonnet, like the Sonnet tuning, I just don't understand all of these other labs, how they don't look at Sonnet and go, why do people actually like it? Oh, maybe it's just because they've tuned it to respond really well on the things that people use the models for. And to me, that is that's all you need. It's this tuning is all you need. And until they figure it out, like look at what they did with computer use. Anthropic did. It's just like they just tuned it to do computer use really well, how you would expect. And I don't know. I think the other guys have got to catch up. I think there's a lot of arrogance right now with OpenAI. The fact, probably a lot of fear internally as well, that Anthropic is crushing them with their models. And, they accidentally leaked O1 for like a brief period the other day, I guess, to get attention. But we will see. Like,
Yeah, and I don't know about the O1 models. Like, I was using them for a little while for problems, but my reaction now is they're slow. They don't necessarily give better answers, and also their method of output is just a really, really frustrating way to work. They seem to want to break, I guess, because of the way they're doing this iterative style of solving the problem. They seem to want to break problems down into all these little segments, and so the actual answer for you, the end user, just isn't as useful. Like, I really rarely find myself going to it anymore. I did for a while. I must say, I was using O1 Mini for a while with fairly good success, but I don't know. I don't get the great results from it that I do from other models. Like, even the new Haiku I've been using a bit this week. Oh, that's the other thing we should mention. The Haiku 3.5 is now available in Sim Theory as well. And I had it on because I was testing it and then left it on. And I'm like, wow, it's answering all my questions. I might as well stick with it. It's fast. It's good.
what did you make of how they like increased the price when they launched it? Like they
I
announced it with a certain price, and then they're like, "Oh, because it's actually smarter than we thought, we're putting the price up."
How interesting. It's sort of like when they make like CPUs and stuff and some turn out to be more powerful than they say on the box and they clock them down. And in this case they're like, "Oh, actually it's better, so we'll just raise the price."
I think
I
we've
didn't
just
know
been
that.
so caught up with like this workspace computer concept. I haven't really Yeah, I haven't really had a chance to play around with Haiku 3.5, but I do think we should report back next week on our thoughts. The weird part about that model is it's like, where does it sit? Like, if you're going to use it, from what I understand about the pricing, like it's not that far off using like Sonnet 3.5. So I just don't know where it sits, because people are saying, oh, you would go to like Google's Flash model or
Well, the other thing is it's not multimodal right now. There's no images in it. So for me, that sort of removes its ability. It can't do workspace mode, obviously, and just not having images is a bit of a deficiency, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, all of my training courses have now been complete. I passed 100% marks there. So thank you, Workspace computer in the background. Literally, I've been so distracted this entire recording because I keep being like, okay, now do the next one, please. And off it goes. So what a use case. I really like that.
I wonder
one.
how long it's before it's like, okay, here, Workspace computer, here's $1,000 in an account, right? Here's the link to your bank or your whatever. Here is a trading website. Here is a research resource. Go make me some money.
Yeah, I think it's
literally have it sitting there 24/7, looking for trends, doing research, and making you money. I mean, it's not that crazy now, like that you could do that.
Yeah, I don't think it's far off at all. Like, I mean, the question is, we obviously need to improve models, and we now, from working with it quite a bit, understand like what you would need to do. But yeah, man, it's getting close and exciting, and I'm so curious. Like, I know a lot of people say this, but I'm genuinely excited to see what our community does with these Workspace computers. Like, what crazy stuff.
I'm predicting we will almost immediately run into a wall of issues, like where can't do this, can't do that. But I think the answer is that we're on standby, ready to iterate and improve and break through those issues. And I think that's where we'll see the real innovation, like working as a community to overcome the common issues, which will then have this propagation effect where it's like, okay, if it can handle that scenario, that'll cover all these other ones as well. And suddenly you'll have something that can really, really accomplish a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing here. It's like, you've got to remember, this stuff is extremely experimental, but man, it's an exciting future ahead.
It's quite a thrill when you see it do something real, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right. So any final thoughts on the week? I know we've been a bit out of touch this week because all we do is sit and try and make a Workspace computer work until 2 a.m. every night. But any thoughts?
I'm going to get it to order me a coffee in a minute on Uber Eats.
Finally.
And we're going to keep cranking, and we're going to see what the model is capable of. I really want to spend a bit of time over the weekend just trying various use cases and gradually improving it, and just seeing where we can get with it. I mean, that's really my motivation, is I just want to see what is possible. The other thing, probably final thought and something worth mentioning, I know you were not as worried about it as me, but very, very soon I want to get GPT-4o working as well. I want a legit alternative so we can compare them. I want to say, when given the same prompt and the same information, same situation, how does Omni perform versus a model that is supposedly and probably tuned for this purpose? I'll be very curious. And then I also want to try the Microsoft UI segmentation thing that you mentioned. I forget the name of it. With both models, so like together and separate, and see, does that bring a noticeable improvement? Because I really feel like for this to work, it's going to be a combination of technologies. Like, we already have combined a bunch of technologies to get it so anyone can have this desktop in the cloud kind of thing going on. And I think that a couple more in the mix might make it even better.
All right. Tell us in the comments, if you do watch on YouTube, what you would like to see us do throughout the week with our Workspace computers, because we will try high-risk things if you so wish.
And you can try yourself.
Yeah, and obviously try yourself. You can go over to simtheory.ai. That's the right URL, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent. Good work. All right. That'll do us for this week. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, please consider leaving a review, a thumbs up, and all the things that you meant to say to do each week. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye. And actually, before we go, look at this. 100% score. Well done.
I
I'm
never
even
got
doing-
100% in those.
No, I'm even doing additional training now. They're going to know I
Additional
completely...
training.
Hey, why not? I mean, I want to be really qualified here. So I'm just...
He's so conscientious.
I
You can't stop him.
Can't stop, won't stop. All right, we'll see you next week. Goodbye.